Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here today with another episode of Ask Dr. Adriana, where you can ask me questions about anything, and I will share with you what I know about it and maybe give you some tools to also maybe give you some ideas as to how you might go about addressing whatever the issue is. And today I wanted to talk about a topic that's very dear to me, which is that of animals. What if we can talk to our animals and all of that? So Vinny is with me today, and he's
Hello.
going to ask me some questions about animals.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Dr. Adriana. The first question that I have for you today is, what's the story with you and your animal?
My animal, it's unfortunate I'm at my office and not at my house right now because he might make an appearance. But my little guy is named Wookie, and he's a Siamese kitty cat who I adopted a couple of years ago, right before COVID. Very good timing. And he's just been in the just incredible joy and a huge contribution to my life. He teaches me a lot about play and fun and being in the moment and enjoying life and enjoying the simple things like sleep and play and having your belly rubbed and all that good stuff. Actually, he doesn't like his belly rubbed. He likes his head rubbed. But, he's been a tremendous gift to me and a contribution to my life and my work as well. He's a healer cat. And he knows, it's interesting. Like when I'm doing sessions at home on the Zoom, he knows when someone's having a really difficult time, and he'll come and he'll lay down next to me, or he'll get in my lap. Or if I'm having a hard time, he knows, like most of our animals do, right? And they're there to comfort us and there to support us. So they can be a tremendous contribution to us in our lives.
That's so cool, Adriana. I do have a cat also. Like I actually have at home, I have a cat, a dog, and a bird. And you've heard the bird lots of times. And my cat especially, like her name is Jaji, and like she's also like a cat healer, like a healer cat. And at my home, playing is like what she does the most, and she behaves almost like a dog, and she's always there like to brighten you up. And I think that's one of the best gifts that animals like give us, to be present and like make us aware of like what life can be and from what space we can function. So talking about that, I would like to know, like, what is your sense here? Like, are animals psychic? Can they perceive what's going on with us? How's your experience with that?
Definitely. That's been my experience with cats and dogs as well. I've mostly had cats in the last few years, but I have had dogs in the past. I definitely think they're, it's funny we use the word psychic as if it's some like magical, mysterious thing. Well, how about we call it awareness, right? That's really what it is. Animals are very aware. They're often aware of things we're not aware, right? Like they say, for example, dogs can hear noises that we humans can't hear. I notice with cats and dogs that they can perceive spirits, right? When your cat or dog is kind of running around amok, like and clearly chasing something that you may not see, what is that? And I'll share with you a little tip I got from my friend Dana, who also has a cat. She actually took her phone and at night when it was like dark or almost totally dark, and shot a video, because you can see orbs on photographs. Most of us know that, right? Orbs are little spirits that you can see in photographs, but you can also capture them on video. And she showed me a video of these orbs, running across the room and the cat chasing them. So you might want to try that trick and see what your camera will capture at night, because your kitties and doggies definitely can perceive spirits. They can also perceive you and your mood. Before I was, as conscious as I am now, I used to notice how when my cat would get really agitated or anxious, oftentimes it was a reflection of what we people in the home, the energy we were being, right? Our animals will feed off of us. So if you're agitated, if you're angry, you're anxious or something, your animal will tend to also mirror that energy and mirror that behavior. So you might want to check yourself or check the other people in the home and see what's going on if your animal is getting kind of on edge. So they perceive a lot of things because all of us at the core are fundamentally energetic beings. We sense energies. The other thing, that has been well studied is how animals are aware of the weather and they're aware of earthquakes and natural disasters before they happen, right? If you guys remember, there was a tsunami in Thailand, years ago, and all the animals knew the day before and like went uphill, right? Went up to the higher altitudes. How did they know a tsunami was coming, right? How do animals know when the earthquake is coming? They do. They know when things are about to happen, and they will respond accordingly. So I think animals are very psychic, very aware, in ways that sometimes we people choose not to allow ourselves to be. I think we have the capacity to be, but we get distracted, we get in our heads, we're not always paying attention to those little whispers of consciousness that we get all the time.
That's awesome, Adriana. We have Josephine here saying hi, and Gaurav just made a comment that they have 2 rabbits and they have not been eating food properly, and in her awareness they're perceiving entities. What could you do to change this?
Well, if the entities are about, like, sometimes what happens with my cat is they're playing with my cat and cat's chasing them around, but like I'm in a meeting or I'm doing a live a podcast or something, and I'll ask them, like in my head or out loud, but I'll ask the entities to please stop it. I need it to be quiet right now. I need my cat to calm down, leave him alone. And if you know any kind of method, tools for clearing entities, you might want to talk to the entities, for example, which is a subspecialty of Access Consciousness that I practice. You learn, or even in Access Foundation class, you learn how to clear entities. There's a very simple clearing you can do. So that would be probably what I would suggest. Or if you know other modalities, you're welcome to use those as well. But sometimes just asking, like, hey, can you please leave my animals alone? The other thing that can sometimes help is to fill the room that you're in with opalescent white light, so that shimmery, pearly kind of white light, or a flame colored light. So flame meaning like bluish violet, red, orange kind of color, fills the room, sometimes will deter entities.
That's awesome, Adriana. And in case sorry, too much noise here. Rabbits are usually pretty sensible animals. I had a rabbit when I was a kid, and maybe even communicating with them, actually talking and engaging with their energy can give you more awareness on what's going on. And that's how my rabbit worked when he was alive. He's not here with us today, but really talk to them. And what tips could you give for people to actually communicate with their animal?
Right. Well, you're always communicating with your animal by the energy you're being, first and foremost, right? That's kind of what I was saying before. So checking in with yourself, am I being hyper? Am I being upset about something? You're communicating that it's not really safe. When you're doing that, when you're being that way, your animal may not feel safe. So what are you communicating with the energy you're being in any given moment? And then if you're trying to get your animal to do something, some animals, obviously we can train them. Dogs, can be trained to sit and to roll over and no. My cat definitely knows what no means. We can teach them those things, but what Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, has said, and he's written about animals, he's talked a lot about animals, and there's another subspecialty of Access called Talk to the Animals, based on the book that he wrote with Dr. Dain Heer, and Susie Godsey is the person who kind of runs that specialty. What they suggest is giving the information. If you want your animal to do something, like I was trying to get my cat to eat the dry food. Like he kept bugging me wanting wet food, and I was trying to get him to eat dry food that was already in the dish. So I was showing him the picture, like telepathically, and like showing him a picture of him eating the dry food in the bowl. And he did. So showing them in pictures, because they don't really use language. They sort of understand, I guess, the energy of your language. But even when you're saying no, isn't it really about the kind of energy more than the no itself, right? I could be saying, hopscotch. And if I said it in that tone of voice, the cat would probably respond the same way I'm saying as they would when I'm saying no. So, but give it to them in pictures. That's a piece of advice that's been suggested. And I have found that can be helpful. There are people who are animal communicators too. I don't necessarily consider myself that per se, but there are definitely people who are very much aware. And I have taken my cat before, a previous cat I had that had sort of mystery stuff going on. I didn't know what was really happening with her. And I did get a pet psychic or animal communicator and got some good information that I wasn't able to pick up on. So there are people who specialize in that for sure. Vinny is frozen. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm having a bit of an internet problem here. Amazing. Adriana, and since we're talking like about communicating with animals, Gaurav was talking about like his rabbits not like eating properly. Like, how can we contribute to those animals? Can we use like any technique on access, like body process or that sort of stuff on them? How can we like contribute?
Well, that's the other thing I was going to suggest, with your rabbits, if they're not eating, I mean, I would ask some questions. And again, it's sort of like tuning into them, tuning into their being and saying, what's going on? Do you need to go to the vet? Are you sick? Right? Sometimes animals don't eat because something's wrong and they need to go to the doctor. Do you need to go to the vet? And I'd be using my light or heavy tools to ask these questions. And it's really asking, it is asking them, but it's also asking yourself and trusting your own knowing. Like, does my animal need to go to the vet, light or heavy? Because, if those of you that know access, whatever's true for you is going to feel light and expansive. Whatever's not true for you is going to feel heavy and contracted. So you can, or if you use muscle testing, that's another, perfectly fine way to ask questions and get more awareness. But does your animal require to go to the doctor, the vet? Does your animal not like the food? Because they can get bored and tired of the food you're feeding. Especially if you're feeding the same thing all the time. With Wiki, I have to alternate. Every time I open a new can of wet food, it's a different thing. One day we're having turkey, another day we're having salmon, another day we're having chicken. He likes that variety. And I think part of the reason he's not eating the dry food right now is because he's bored of it and he wants a different one. So is your rabbit maybe wanting something different to eat? But also, if they're not well, if their body is having a hard time for whatever reason, we can run energy on animals. Years ago, in fact, I was at my chiropractor's office and I saw an acupuncture chart of a cat. So many of the treatments that we do on humans and their bodies, we can also do on animals. There are animal chiropractors. There are animal acupuncturists. We can do tapping or EFT, which is also stimulating acupuncture points on our pets. And if you use access tools, we can also run body processes on them. We don't run bars. Bars is something just people have because people are the ones who do judgments and all that stuff. Animals don't do that. Animals don't judge. So we don't do bars on them, although they love to be around bars. Anytime we're running bars at my house, Wookie is right up there snuggled up on top, and he loves body processes too. But I remember when Miss Cocoa Puff, my last cat, was very sick. And she was in the latter stages of her life, and she had gone into the vet with pancreatitis, and they didn't think she was going to make it. But I asked her, I said, do you want to still be here? And I got a yes. So I ran a body process on her called Exit Stage Left. which really was going to give her the choice to either leave her body or to stay in her body and get healthier. She wanted to stay. So the vets were amazed that she actually made a recovery from that. And she lived 2 more months. And every night, as much as she would allow, because she would let me know when she was done, I would run body processes on her. I would run MTVSS or other body processes, whatever I got an awareness that she needed. Or sometimes I would just, because my body knows so many of these energies, sometimes I would just lay my hands on her and run whatever process, is going to contribute to the most to her body. So she lived another 2 months. And that was a really, special time for me, because it was kind of sudden and I wasn't ready for her to go just yet. She was maybe 8, 9 years old. She wasn't that old. So, yeah. Anyway, so yes, we can run energy on animals and we can give them a lot of the same treatments. And I know standard vet stuff, they'll give dogs, cats, animals, Valium, they'll give them things to the same kinds of psychotropic meds they might give to people. They'll give some of them to animals, which is interesting. But I think we can do a lot with energy work for our furry friends.
Gaurav made a comment saying that he's done foundation and he knows like the basic tools of talking to the entities, and he keeps using them to clear those and like communicate with his animals. Mm-hmm. But he's not very good at that. He's saying that's a lot of voices in his throat. So what would you recommend to him? Doing talk to the entity classes? What's your tip to him?
Probably, yeah. I would probably start there. Maybe a talk to the entities intro or beginning class. And you might want to, or doing a session with a talk to the entities facilitator. There are, I think, over 150 of us around the world, because you may have a portal situation going on, and portals aren't always, they're not covered in foundation. It's a little bit more for a talk to the entities kind of class. And those, aren't always so easy to deal with. You can definitely close them pretty easily, but keeping them closed can be a bit more of a challenge. So for now, what you could do is ask, are there any portals here in the home? Could be the home itself, could be someone in the home that's a portal. And, you might be able to temporarily close it and keep it closed. The other thing you could look at is Shannon has, and maybe, we can add a link to this in the comments afterwards, but Shannon has a space clearing loop in her shop that is very helpful for, like, it's just, entity clearings and stuff. And there's a demon clearing loop also. You can ask to see if it's that kind of entity. But if you let it run, just in the background continuously, it'll help clear the space of those entities. But if you have a portal situation, that might be a bit more complex. You might want to get some individual facilitation around that.
Awesome. He's saying that's definitely some portals there, and he's going to deal with them. Good. What else is possible with animals, Dr. Adriana?
What else is possible? What a gift. What contribution, animals function from the kingdom of we. That's what one of the things I love so much about them. People, not so much. People tend to function, at least in this reality, a lot of people function from the kingdom of me. It's like me, what I want to get, even how I think some people have treated animals in the past. If you think about like horses and cows and just kind of the way, we've not treated them with kindness. I'm not really a big fan of animal cruelty and some of the things that have been done to animals with a lot of unkindness. So I love that animals function from the kingdom of we. Gary talks about how when there's less food, it's a time of famine or drought, animals actually, they're aware of that and they won't procreate. Rabbits who like to mate like crazy, they won't mate as much and they won't have as many babies because they're aware that there isn't enough food in the community, in their little community, for all the animals. And so they'll back off, and all kinds of species of animals do that. So I would love to see, us humans function more like the animals as far as like kingdom of we and contributing to the earth. And I wonder, what the animals know about the earth that we can learn from them, and what else can they teach us about everything, right? Like, I've learned a lot from my cats and dogs and stuff, especially about unconditional love and non-judgment and being in the present moment, and just enjoying like the touch and the senses, that we have when we have a body, like the gift of having a body. And I would love to see us work with the animals more harmoniously and include them. If you're going to, for example, when you eat meat, take a moment and express gratitude. Thank you. Thank you, animal, for, offering yourself up for my, body's nutrition and well-being. Because they're, it's a sacrifice. They're giving up their life for us. Thank you, Wookiee, and all the other animals for being my companion, expressing the gratitude and sharing in that like unconditional love and that they give us. What would it be like if we could be more like them in the world and function more like they do?
Yeah, I wish I could like function more like my cat does.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely chooses for her, like no matter what. And it's funny looking at like what can we learn and like receive from them. They're really a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Gaurav is thanking you, saying that like those tools from Talk to the Entities were what was like lacking in his arsenal. And
Mm-hmm.
he made a comment that yes, rabbits mate like crazy, and he doesn't want them to reproduce once more than a year.
Yeah. Well, ask them. I mean, you could just try asking them and see what that creates. Also, what might be fun, Vinny? Let's also include in the comments a link to, I did a show, gosh, I don't know, maybe it was a year or two ago, with another access facilitator, Dr. Andy Harper, and she's a vet. And we talked about animals and spirits, and we both of us had some really cool stories to share. I was on her radio show. It's somewhere on my website under the in the media stuff. So we definitely talked more about access tools and more from an access perspective about animals and the spirit world. So yeah, you might want to check that out also. That was a really fun conversation.
Awesome. I'll get those there for everyone. Thank you so much, Adriana.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for tuning in today.
Yeah.